Well, good evening and welcome to the Neighborhood Passions Affinity Network, presented by Google tonight. And of course, Neighbor to Neighbor. I'm Valerie and I'm going to be your hostess. So, tonight we're going to focus on crime reduction and prevention, one of the neighborhood passions. And our topic is going to be car break ins, changing the paradigm. So, why are car break ins a constant problem ever since I've been to Neighbor, going on 5 years now? When we were out at neighborhood meetings, that was always the topic of conversation, car break ins. And yet, after all these years of the police encouraging people to lock your doors, please lock your doors, we're still faced with this issue. So, what's it going to take to change people's behaviors, their minds, their hearts, uh, and get our neighbors to lock their doors? So, during this session, we're going to explore kind of some new strategies to think about addressing this old problem. And we have a very special treat tonight. Jim Hawk is our speaker. Yay, Jim. Yeah, so Jim, of course, is the executive director of Neighbor to Neighbor. He is originally from Western Pennsylvania and he moved to Nashville in 1986. He graduated from Vanderbilt Divinity School and Scarrett Graduate School. Jim, were you the last class of Scarrett to
That was
graduate from there?
after me. They had to close. There was
Yeah, so in
uh,
2013, Jim joined the staff of then the Neighborhoods Resource Center, that was our former name, and became the executive director in 2014. He is a skill facilitator, an educator, and absolutely committed to helping neighbors succeed, neighborhoods succeed. Jim and his spouse live in East Nashville, as he said, in historic Edgefield. And in his free time, he enjoys working in his wildflower garden. Jim, take it away.
okay. Thanks, Valerie. I need to edit that down to about 2 sentences.
Oh.
It's good to see everybody here. I feel like I'm among old friends, and
Mhm.
so that's a good thing. I hope that this is going to be a conversation tonight. And as I was thinking about that, I heard again what we had written about 2 months ago, and realized that I've changed a little bit with how we're going to be approaching this tonight. I think it'll be in the long term. I think it'll be okay. But a few thoughts starting out. Number one, there really are no simple answers. And so if anybody's coming here tonight looking for the magic key, yeah, I know John Stern always is looking for the magic key, right? It's not going to be here. Um, the road, the only way to get through this is, as someone recently told me, to get through it. And that means going through it together, in our own neighborhoods, and as a larger Nashville community. Um, uh, the other thing is to remember, for me, it's important to remember, neighborhood organizations are not the police department. Therefore, we have the opportunity to think differently about this situation than the police do. The police have a specific mandate, that they are there to enforce the law. We are not there to enforce the law. We are there to create a safer, healthier, and more vibrant neighborhood. And so we can think in ways and do things that the police cannot. And that's our challenge, is to get out of the mindset. One of the challenges to get out of that mindset, and really think more holistically about what's going on here. Um, I'd like to do a lot of different things about this tonight. I think at one point, I think I'd like to talk to you all about doing a root cause analysis of what's really going on with car break-ins. And so we'll talk about what that is a little bit. I do want to talk about, how we approach our neighbors who are not complying, that aren't, their behavior is consistently, the same over and over again. They're not locking their doors. where they've heard this. But before I do all of that, I really want to focus on neighborhood organizations and how we approach problem solving, because ultimately this is the challenge of how we solve problems. And if we can get the process right, this process that is more inclusive, welcomes all neighbors' contributions to the situation, we not only are going to succeed and make progress in this issue, but really in any issue that faces the neighborhood. And so I'm going to start out with this little story that Wacy and I talk a lot. She's one of my neighbors, and so we, driving to work, she also works here at Neighbor to Neighbor a couple of days a week. We're always talking about things, and one of the things that I recently realized is that how we approach our neighbors who come to these meetings is significant. And I think a lot of times unconsciously, we really intend to engage people in the conversation. But what happens really is we don't engage in a deep level, but really at an emotional level where people are letting off steam and sharing their frustrations, but not really problem solving. And I was thinking about that a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, and had two visions of what that means. And I'll share that with you tonight. I think if we look at the feudal system, going way back in time, right? And the Lord of the realm would call all the peasants together, say, "Come on, get in this room. Let's sit down and have a conversation," right? And then the Lord of the realm, or his or her representative, would begin to talk about what's going on and give reports and share all the information. And a generous, benevolent Lord would allow the peasants to spout off and even complain, and they wouldn't get their head cut off if they were benevolent, right? And if they were benevolent, they would maybe even say, "I need you to do this, right?" It would all come back on the person in charge. And I see that in a lot of our neighborhood organizations, I don't want to say a lot. I mean, I don't want to say everyone, I'm not saying that, but in many, where everything keeps falling back on the chair of the neighborhood organization. And what a lot of times happens is there's a lot of complaining that goes on, but there's no working together. The other model that I'm following on, I'm going way back for these models, but so forgive me for my patriarchal exploration here, right? But the other model is that of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. We've all heard the story of the Round Table, and we've all heard about this great king who brought all of his knights together around the Round Table, and they ruled together. Every knight came to that meeting to talk about what was going on in the realm and to share their perspective and to contribute to the success of the realm. But they didn't stop there. When the meeting was over, they went back and did the business that they needed to do to make the realm great. They themselves had a code of conduct that they were working constantly on making their realm a better place to live, work, play, as I would say today. I'm not sure how they said it back there. Maybe a better place to drink ale and enjoy all the wonderful people, whatever it is, right? We've got to figure out a way to truly engage people in becoming knights. Right, we've got to figure out a way to empower people so that when they leave the space, first of all, when they come to the space, they are treated as equal partners, and that they have a voice, and that we don't spend the entire time listening to reports and hearing from the chair and maybe two or three people who are always talking in our meetings, right? That we're really helping people to engage and hearing all the voices. And that requires better facilitation on our part to really actively do it. Let me give you an example. While I think what I am saying is some of the most important stuff in the world, for the last 10 minutes, I have been talking and you have been sitting there listening to me. And you have not contributed 1 cent to this conversation yet, right? So even for me, it is easy to do because I'm thinking, oh, I got all this stuff that I got to explain before we can get to the conversation. And we explain and we explain and we explain. And by the time we get done, the time's gone. So we've got to figure out a way to engage our neighbors better in these conversations. And that's tough because we live in a truly polarized situation. What happens if you come into a neighborhood that has very diverse political opinions, which is almost every neighborhood, and someone like John Stern comes in and says, we need to put every person who doesn't have their gun taken in, all hell breaks loose, because there are other people who are sitting there thinking, my God, who is this nut? Of course, John's sitting there thinking they're nuts, and then we never get anywhere. And so we've got to really work on that.
But when you're right, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think what I've heard in the recovery community is, would you rather be right or be at peace? And I think sometimes we have a lot of people, and I'm not talking about you here, Todd, we have a lot of people that really have to be right. And it really means then that everybody else is either on their side or they're wrong. And so part of it is setting the ground rules to say, look, we're going to have, I think you've heard it before, we're going to have diverse opinions, but in a way that it really gets through to people, and that we teach people about how to respect one another. Okay, so the two things that I really would like to talk to you about is, one is, and so I'm going to present a little discussion about root cause analysis, and I'm going to ask you to participate in that. Here's what I don't want you to do. All the stuff that we talked about tonight, I don't want you to take back to your neighborhood and say, well, this is what we found out. We found out that the cause of this is this. All right. What I'd like you to do is to go back to your neighborhood and engage them in a root cause analysis so that they can say, this is what we came up with together. Right. And then help neighbors to identify that that portion of the analysis that they're willing to work on. Okay. So I'm gonna bring up, because I am just dying without a whiteboard. So I'm gonna bring up my friend Miro here a second, so that we can play with some Post-it notes and have a real discussion. All right, it's reconnecting. Come on. I love this program. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So we can say that maybe one of the root causes of our frustration is car break-ins, because we're always talking about it. But let's talk about what are the root causes of car break-ins. What's really happening that's causing these car break-ins to occur. In your opinion, can you all, would you be willing to share, at least share one thing that you really think is a root cause of car break-ins?
The need for young people to have money for whatever reason.
All right, thank you, John. Got another one, folks?
Yes,
Go ahead, don't be shy.
they're looking for items such as purses, devices as laptops, cell phones.
Okay, that's good, Helen. That is really an effect. But what's causing that? Why are they? So I'll go another way. I'm going to ask you to go deeper. Yeah, but why are they looking for those things?
To sell. Sometimes they take those cars to chop shops,
Yep.
and when they take them to chop shops, they can make money from. Because the people at the chop shops can
Yes.
make money from the parts that they sell.
So you're making John really happy because you're telling John that he's right. That, that one of the root cause analysis is the people, the need for young people to have money. And it may be because they personally need it for something, or it may be that they just want to spend money, but they need it. Is there, what are some of the other things that are going on?
Lack of jobs.
Okay. Which kind of sort of is a lack of money type thing, but I think it goes even deeper, right? So we'll put that in. What's some other things that are going on here?
It's opportunity. You know, you get people that are out. I was thinking more of opportunity. They see a car there, and
Yeah.
let's just see if we can get in it. And it's not necessarily anything that's valuable that's taken. It's just something to do.
Boredom.
Boredom, yeah.
That's what I was gonna say, boredom.
Lack of opportunity is another good one in a different way, though.
Yeah, does that sort of fall over with the job thing, or is that something else?
I think it's kind of the jobs opportunity to just do anything, whether it's a job or sport or just something with others. You know, they're just kind of left to figure out what to do.
And I'm going to ask people, I am seeing, when I have this up on the screen, I cannot read chat. It will not come up. So if you have something in there, if anybody sees anything in there, let's get that down.
Homelessness and displacement in the chat.
Homelessness and displacement. And it was interesting today. I've been talking to different folks in the police department about this, and of course, one of the things that I just flat out asked, I said, so if people are, and I don't think you're saying this, Ingrid, but we know that it is generally younger people between the ages of 18 and 30. Now, this is really important, who are caught on camera or who are seen. And we don't know about those who are unseen what they are, but we know that that's usually what it is. There was some question, someone recently told me that, of course, it was all these homeless people running around trying to get money. So I put that before the police officer. The response was that no, it's not that homeless people are doing this in mass. That's really, now some homeless people who are homeless have taken things, and generally if they're doing that, they're looking only for like money.
Right.
They're not looking to resell things.
Right. And Jim, so I have some personal experience in the last week.
Good.
with the homelessness now, homelessness, you may think of somebody that's in a tent or something like that, but these are people who are residing in their cars. Okay. And they, like, okay, I'm one of those people who forgot to lock the door. And when I checked on it at 11 o'clock, it was too late because somebody had already rummaged through the car. But I don't keep anything in the car because I know, the history of the neighborhood. But what I did have, I had a bunch of change. I had some change and I had $1 bill. Then I had some other miscellaneous umbrellas, some other things like that. They took the $1 bill and left the change. So to me, it's like, okay, there were some other things that if you were looking for items to sell, you could have sold the umbrella. It was a Coach umbrella. There's things you could have sold, but that's a person who was trying to get something in order to, they were just looking for the money. That was it. And then I had a kid recently, 7 years old. I think he's River Chase. He kind of said over there, but he didn't really say where. And it evolved until he was asking people playing tennis for money, and somebody came back and bought him food. I bought him food. And then the next day at 9 o'clock, he's knocking on my door and he has 3 other kids with him and none of them had shoes on. And they looked like they needed personal care.
Yeah.
And one was his sister. And he had a slight accent, so I'm not sure, the background of him. But I know I'm looking at the kid that's 7, 10, 12, and another one maybe 8 or 9 at 9 o'clock in the morning. 3 of them without shoes on.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know if they're actually homeless, displaced, or what's going on. I was concerned because you have a child that you start off, because later on my camera, I could see that he my porch and he was looking through my mailbox. So, things we talked about his mom a little bit. Yeah, she's home. I don't know if that's truthful, but I know adults teach kids how to do things.
On that
So,
note, yeah, I'm finished. I was going to say, on that note, I like to say peer pressures and gangs. Teenagers that are in gangs and have peer pressure, they're going to do a lot of things. So I don't think, peer pressure and gangs, that will cause kids to break in.
so that's my story.
Thank you. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you.
And Jim,
Yes.
Over in the Belshire area, I just spoke with the Madison precinct about 2 weeks ago because there was a vehicle that was left over in the beginning of the subdivision. So a lot of people were concerned because they were trying to find out if the car was stolen or what the deal was with the car. But once I called and they checked on it, the police officer said he think that there was some younger kids that stole it from another neighborhood, joy riding around and dropped it off in our community. But they came and got it. But nothing it wasn't stripped down or anything. They just left it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the joyride could be one.
Does that lead into result from boredom?
Yes.
Is that close to that?
Yeah.
Just want to have fun?
Yes.
What is there anything else that might be causing this?
I think, and I'm not sure I'm going to say this right, but it's the lack of incentive not to do this, both from like the juvenile justice system, which you go in and out, in and out, or also, I guess it gets back to there's nothing else that they think that they can do, sort of.
Oh, there's
It's a little bit of both.
mentors. Lack
Yeah.
of mentorship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that leads to no real consequences. Because when these kids are juvenile, we had a group of kids in our neighborhood who were stealing mail. Then they started stealing packages. Then they started stealing cars. Then they started breaking into houses. Their mother was working, only parent, 3 kids, bored out of their minds, and they were stealing. And every time the police would come and arrest them, they would slap their hands and put them back. And there was no real consequences at all for their behavior. And the only time it stopped is when the landlord finally kicked them out.
So one of the things I've experienced here, lack of consequences, and even with this young man that I had that's 7 years old, and then having talked to the community center manager there, is goes back to what I was taught as a kid, idle hands of the devil's workshop. And if you, the consequence really is get the kids engaged in programs which they keep their minds and their hands active. If they're acting out in this behavior, to me, that tells me there's other things going on in the household. And so I got to go to the root cause to really be able to fix, because otherwise we're just being reactionary and not really solving the problem. And I don't want a 7-year-old to get lost in the system, because he's going to get lost in the system, or either somebody's going to pick him up and he's going to disappear, and we're going to wonder, where's this missing child? And that's the worst thing that happened, because we already have that happening in Nashville. Kids are disappearing. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. I got, okay. So is there any other root causes? I mean, have we hit our max on what are the root causes of why we're having so many of these problems? All right. Well, that's okay, because I think you could go on with this. I think some people would say that one of the root causes is that we don't have enough law enforcement. Others would talk about a whole bunch of other things. It doesn't, but so there are other options out there. If we were moving forward with this, what I would want to do then is to ask, I would probably break my neighborhood group, if it was large, into smaller groups and ask them, what are some specific things that our neighborhood could do to address these issues? If this is an important problem, what are the things that our neighborhood can do to address these problems? And there's, the mentoring issue. It might be, a summer jobs program that, residents hire local kids to mow their yards over the years, something. I don't know what it is, because it will come from your neighborhood. Something important, though, that we have to confess at this point. There are some neighborhoods in which the crime comes from within, right? And it may be just across the street and I don't want to, I'm going to say in an apartment complex, but it could be, something else. It could be, a group of homes, right? I don't want us to make any assumptions that kids who live in an apartment complex are more likely to steal. That is not what I'm trying to say here, okay? But, they come from outside of or they live within the neighborhood in some way, and they're going to rob. The other, or break into the car. The other is that there are neighborhoods that have gangs of kids who are coming into their neighborhood, and maybe not even from the next neighborhood, who are, really, coming in, pillaging, using the feudal system, pillaging the neighborhood, and then leaving. And so if you're in one of those neighborhoods, whichever neighborhood you are, the solutions are going to be different. And so I just wanted to wear that. But But if you're if this is one thing that you can do, and it really is a whole different picture. MNPD knows that we have these problems, but they're not set up. That's not what their role is. And so it comes on particularly if the people that are doing this live within the community, for us to figure out ways to address this, to solve these issues. I'm gonna leave it there because I'm watching my time. The other thing that I have been thinking about, and I'd like you to consider, and this goes right to the question of people who are habitual not lockers of doors, or people who habitually, leave. I don't know about you, but I have found that a couple things with that. Neighborhood organizations, this is where we talk about the peasants coming into the room. The officers are really good about coming to our neighborhood meetings and telling everybody to lock the door. They also got PSAs, ads, and all that stuff out there. If anybody's reading a newspaper that's, 18 to 30, I'm sure they're out there, but, or on social media, right? All of these things. But as a neighborhood, when we gather, that information comes into our neighborhood organization. And something that I really know, with the exception of Ingrid, is that most of us are locking our doors. unless we have a moment of lapse sanity,
1
or
hour.
1 hour of
1
lapse
hour.
memory, right? And then you're taken advantage of. The problem is that message is not getting outside of our neighborhood organizations. And that's why I was talking about that night, that white knight, is that we've really got, being a knight of the realm, is that we've got to figure out a way to empower our neighbors to get that message out there. I'm scared now, and I'm sure John's going around. So that's a good point. To have that conversation. But I will say this about the conversation. Have you noticed lately that people get really defensive when you tell them they're doing something wrong?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And that and I was trying to figure out, how do you and I, even me, if I'm doing, someone tells me, the other day I was trying to make a left-hand turn and this lady was telling me I couldn't make a left turn. I got really angry at her. She was right, but I wanted to make a left-hand turn and I had to make my own mistakes, which oddly enough is exactly what's happening when we're telling people that they need to lock their doors, and they get robbed. So one of the little things that I think I'm learning about, and I don't know enough about it, but I think it would be great for neighborhood organizations to do. In California, so I'm not gonna say New York's the place to do things, but in California, when the LGBT community was being assailed by the people on the far right who were trying to take away rights and liberties, right? That community did not go and knock on people's door and say, you need to vote against. They created an in-depth survey that provided a vehicle for a conversation. And the people themselves, through the way the survey was conducted, their attitude changed from the time, from the beginning of the conversation to the end. And the person who was conducting the survey didn't say at any point, you need to do this. But it was really an engaging type opportunity. Questions were raised. And the person would stop and think about it, and then they would respond. And then another question was raised. One of the examples that I saw was a woman who but really didn't think transgender people should be allowed in men's restrooms. And so or transgendered women shouldn't be allowed at men's restrooms. And so, they elicited, well, why is that? Why do you think that is? And went on with it. And then at the next point, she began to identify, well, I have a transgender brother. And then they began talking about that. And at the end of the conversation, she was like, well, I really need to stand up for him. And I need to be against this. And the person who was conducting the interview never told her to do that. And I'm wondering if, because we're living in and that's wherever you stand on LGBT issues, that's your own stuff. I'm talking about the tool. And I think the tool works. And it's something that we need to explore a little bit more when we're talking with our neighbors. Valerie and I realize we hear it too much. Do you know that people don't like to go and talk to their neighbors? All right. We really talk about the need for neighborhood canvases and for people visiting with their neighbors, and people all the time are shaking their head yes, but with their feet they're walking in the other direction, right? And I think part of it is because of the notion that we're going to be telling our neighbors what to do. But if we're really out there eliciting and trying to understand our neighbors and trying to develop relationships with them, I think there's real opportunity. But that's what I was saying when this is a difficult thing to do, is because I think a lot of us want to do it on our own. Working with other people is really hard. It's really easy for the police to come into the neighborhood and say, you need to lock your cars, right? And it's really hard for us to put that in, easy for us to put that in the newsletter. But to really have those conversations and try to figure out a way that changes hearts and minds. I think that's where the real challenge is. And I think we can succeed in doing this. And again, if we can succeed in having these conversations about car locking, we can succeed in having these conversations about development.
Can you encapsulate that into something? I hear you, but encapsulate it to the point where I could go out and do it tomorrow.
So I can't, John, because I have read enough to know that, and in fact, I'm getting ready to call you to help me. And seriously, I had you and Twana Chick on my hot list to call when I get back from my vacation, because I think that we could develop an instrument, a tool that would help neighbors have these conversations. If we look toward California and that in-depth survey, as a means for neighborhood organizations to have these conversations. And again, for those of you who are living in gentrifying neighborhoods, using a tool like this, where you're not going and telling your white neighbors or your Black neighbors to get out because they're the new ones, or trying to push your old neighbors out, right? But a tool where we can elicit information from our neighbors and move them along and help them to work this out on their own. I think that is where we're headed. Sue, please.
Yes, there is one tool that everyone in my neighborhood wants.
What's
license plate readers.
Yeah.
We want to know who's coming into our neighborhood. We want to know who they are, and we want to be able to catch them.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to have license plate readers because some people are worried about their privacy. Well, everyone in my neighborhood says, I don't care about my privacy. I care about my car and who's coming in here late at night in their car. And that goes back to consequences.
Yeah.
Okay, we're sorry you don't have a job. We're sorry that COVID has shut things down. We're sorry you don't have money. and all of the things that you think that we owe you by stealing from my car, but we would like to have some real consequences. That's all.
That's good. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. And so that's the other side of it is Sue holds an opinion that is sort of counter to a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about the last 45 minutes, right? How do we as a neighborhood organization have a broad enough, and this sounds like we're talking Republicans and Democrats, but how do we have a broad enough tent to allow Sue and what Sue's working and what her concerns are to do that, while at the same time, maybe Ingrid's down here working on these other issues? And how do we allow that to happen in our neighborhood?
The normal political process. Everything finds itself in the moderate center. It's the coming to a place where everybody is comfortable. It's difficult as heck.
Yep.
But with one thing that I'd like to point out is not everything that the police tell you is the best way to move forward. They are a very distinct organization, very specific type of enterprise. So when you think about them, include a little bit of the alternative perspective. Out here, we're suggesting that instead of adding more lights, adding less light, so that when the bad people come in their cars, they can't see what's inside other cars. And so they use flashlights. And when they use flashlights, what do you have? An identifying feature that neighbors can then call the police. Of course, police can't respond because we don't have enough police officers. So that whole model is dead.
That's why we want to have the license plate readers so that the police don't have to come out here. They can immediately, if someone calls up and says, someone is rustling through my car and they're in a white vehicle, they can immediately go to our license plate reader and see what white vehicle has come in the past hour.
But the neighbor that's having an affair with the married woman next to you doesn't necessarily want you to know that they're in your neighborhood.
But you know what?
They actually have a right not to.
That's true. But you know what? Is that if you're a resident, you can make your car invisible. On the license plate reader, if you live in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
you can say, I don't want my license plate seen anytime. That's fine. And when they steal your car, we won't see it.
So LPRs is a whole different thing. The other idea that's out there is clearly don't leave anything in your car.
Well, yeah.
Then leave it unlocked. Because even if it's unlocked, what are they going to get? If they don't smash the window, which costs what, $300 or $400 to replace? That's the alternative thought process versus conventional, monitor and call the police and do this. It's actually being a little more proactive as individuals. But I look forward to Jim's solution.
So again, I was not going to present any solutions, but just some ideas tonight. But Sue, I'm glad you're talking about license plate readers. Have you been in contact with Vanderbilt University? Have you been part of theirs? I need to connect you with them because they are actually looking for some neighborhoods that want to do license plate readers to do a significant study on that. And so I think that might, because there are, John is there with that. There's a lot of major concerns about license plate readers, but or we pass them every day, and people are getting our data. We know they know where we're driving by, and so they can eventually pop up a little message. You just passed by McDonald's. You need to stop by here and get a Shamrock Shake, right?
That's right.
So,
and your license is given to you by the state. So it isn't a secret. Every police officer can find your license, your name, your address, your phone number with no problems whatsoever. without even using a license plate reader. So that information is public. I can get your information in about 5 minutes on my computer.
Yep.
So it's not a secret.
So Valerie, because I am getting ready to go out of town, if you would help me remember, and either you or I will send Sue Daniel's email, because I
Information.
really
Thank you.
think that group would be a good group for her to look at. Closing thought, I don't know if this, I hope that there was some help here for you all.
Yeah.
Right? Is there anything, any closing arguments? I mean, any closing thoughts from the audience about Ingrid?
Well, here's the thing that I've talked to my group about doing, and I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to really do it smoothly. And it was to do, how you do like a test run. You have a night that we would engage we asked the East Precinct to help us. And we just kind of, with flyers, go around and check people's door and put a flyer on there, lock your door, that kind of. Now, the technicality is police can't open someone else's car door. Okay, so I already encountered that part. But, us as residents, maybe we can find homes that want to participate and not announce what day we would do it. And we just go around with the license plate numbers and just kind of, hey, check, this is the night we're doing it. And here, check your car, here's a flyer. We lock the doors and keep going. Or either knock on their door and say, hey, I think your car is unlocked.
Sounds perfect for Nashville Night Out Against Crime.
Yes. Maybe a precursor to that, actually.
Yeah.
So
That's a great idea. And I think that all of these suggestions that you've made today, Jim and Ingrid, would be great things at people's annual meetings that are coming up. Rather than giving everybody a bunch of reports and this is what we've been doing, is to actually open it up to listening. Say, here's the financials. Okay, you people live here. This is your meeting. What do you want to talk about?
And
And
the other thing that I just want to leave you with, thank you, Sue, is this. Be bold and don't be so concerned about making mistakes. Life, I have learned this. Life is one big experiment after another. Nobody has the solutions. And if they did, John, who's a voracious reader, he would know what the answer is to this problem. But the only way that we're ever going to move forward is by bringing our residents together and having these hard conversations and trying things and seeing what works and what doesn't. So I think I don't know if this was John's time here or whether it was Yolanda's time here, but the image that comes to me is years ago in what's Honda's neighborhood, Buchanan Street, right? They had a series of murders of prostitutes. And they were dumping the bodies in abandoned houses. And the neighbors thought about this and we worked with them. And their solution was to work with the codes department to get the houses boarded up or torn down. And Greg Pello tells me that took care of what was going on. So I think that's out of the box. And so we have to be willing to think outside of the box on these very, very difficult issues. And that do have a tendency to polarize people. We just got to do it. And we're the ones that we don't have to be the ones doing it all, but we're the ones that are here and we need to go back to our groups and empower them to do that. In other words, you all need to be the King Arthurs or the Queen Arthresses, whatever the appropriate term is, who create the round table. who really engage their neighbors and allow their neighbors to come to decisions together. Sir John. All right. That's all I got, Valerie. I'm turning it back over to you.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts? Any other thoughts before we close out here? Yeah, Jim, thank you so much. Sorry for helping us kind of think about how we change behaviors as it relates to car break-ins. You gave us a lot to chew on. Thank you, audience, for your wonderful participation, your great questions. Yay. So, and next week, we're going to have Julie uh, Berbiglia. I hope I said that correctly. And she's going to discuss with us how to use water more wisely in your lawns and gardens. It's that time of year that we're watering gardens. And we also want to remind you about becoming members of Neighbor to Neighbor. We're entering our membership season, so please think about that and become a member today. And great neighborhoods don't happen by accident. Um, think about what your neighborhood passion is, and then go about making sure your neighborhood is a safe and vibrant place to live. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Have a good vacation, Jim.
Yeah,
Yeah, have a great time.
Yay! I'm looking forward to it.